Marcus Sterling hadn't stepped into an ordinary cafe in 15 years, because his world consisted of private jets and exclusive restaurants, where waiters knew his name before he spoke. But today, his 8-year-old daughter Lily sat beside him, in the worn leather booth of Rosie's Corner Café. Her small hands folded quietly in her lap, while the smell of fresh coffee and bacon filled the air around them. The custody agreement mandated these visits every Saturday, though Marcus barely knew how to connect with his daughter, who hadn't spoken a single word since the terrible car accident that took her mother 3 years ago, leaving the little girl trapped in a silent world that Marcus couldn't penetrate despite hiring the best therapists money could buy. He watched helplessly as Lily pointed at the colorful menu with pictures of pancakes and waffles, her bright blue eyes scanning the options while her father felt completely lost, not knowing if she wanted orange juice or milk, scrambled eggs, or French toast, because she wouldn't speak and he didn't understand her gestures. The other diner's cheerful chatter felt overwhelming to Marcus, who was used to quiet executive lounges, and he could feel people staring at him in his $3,000 suit sitting in this simple neighborhood cafe, where coffee cost $2 and came in chipped mugs. Marcus fumbled with his phone, ready to text his assistant Jennifer to find yet another specialist who might help Lily speak again, when a warm voice interrupted his thoughts. "Good morning. I'm Maya, and I'll be taking care of you today." And Marcus looked up to see a young black waitress with natural hair pulled back in a colorful headwrap, her smile genuine and bright as morning sunshine. The waitress wore a simple uniform with a name tag, but something about her presence felt different, calming even, and she looked directly at Lily rather than ignoring her like most adults did when they realized she wouldn't respond verbally. Maya noticed Lily's small hearing aids tucked behind her ears and the way the child watched Maya's lips intently, trying to read every movement, and without missing a beat or asking any awkward questions. Maya's hands began to move fluidly through the air, her fingers dancing as she signed, "Hello, beautiful. What's your name?" And Marcus's expensive coffee cup stopped midway to his lips, the hot liquid nearly spilling as his hand trembled. Lily's entire face transformed like the sun breaking through storm clouds. Her eyes widened with wonder and disbelief, her mouth opened in a small O of surprise. And for the first time in 3 years, Marcus saw pure radiant joy spreading across his daughter's face like watercolor paint on canvas. The little girl's hands flew up eagerly, her fingers moving rapidly as she signed back. And though Marcus couldn't understand what she was saying, he could see the excitement making her whole body vibrate with energy, her feet swinging under the table as she communicated with someone who finally understood her. Maya laughed, a musical sound that drew the attention of other customers, but not in a bad way. And she continued signing while speaking aloud for Marcus's benefit. "Lily. What a beautiful name for such a beautiful, smart girl. You know what? I think you might like our secret menu that's only for special customers who speak our silent language." And she winked at Lily. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion he hadn't expected, watching his daughter's shoulders shake with silent giggles, her face more animated than he'd seen since before the accident, and he realized with crushing clarity that Lily wasn't broken or damaged. She just needed someone who could speak her language. "How do you ... where did you learn to do that?" Marcus stumbled over his words, feeling suddenly small and inadequate in his expensive suit, his millions of dollars worthless, in this moment where a cafe waitress had accomplished what dozens of expensive specialists couldn't. Maya's expression softened as she pulled out her notepad, but instead of writing their order immediately, she drew a quick butterfly with remarkable skill and showed it to Lily, who clapped her hands with delight. "My younger brother David was born deaf, so our whole family learned ASL American Sign Language when he was just a baby. But more importantly, Mr. Sterling," she said, recognizing him now, but treating him no differently. "Communication is about connection, not just words. Your daughter has plenty to say. The world just needs to learn how to listen." She then signed something to Lily that made the little girl look at her father with hope in her eyes, and Maya translated. I told her, "You're going to learn too, because daddies who love their daughters always find a way to talk to them, even if it's with their hands instead of their voices." Marcus felt tears threatening to spill, something that hadn't happened in any boardroom or business deal, and he watched Maya take their order with Lily actively participating, signing her preferences for chocolate chip pancakes with extra whipped cream and strawberry milk. Things Marcus never knew she liked, because he'd been too focused on trying to fix her instead of understanding her. The morning sun streamed through the cafe windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny celebrations. And Marcus realized that in this simple cafe, with its cracked vinyl seats and aged coffee machine, his daughter had found something all his money couldn't buy: someone who saw her not as a problem to be solved, but as a person to be heard. And as he watched Lily sign animatedly with Maya about her favorite colors and toys, Marcus understood that the walls he thought were protecting them were actually keeping them apart, and maybe, just maybe, this unexpected encounter with a waitress who spoke the language of silence would teach him how to finally reach his daughter's heart. Lily's hands flew up eagerly like birds taking flight, signing back with an enthusiasm that made the entire cafe seem brighter, her fingers moving so fast that Maya had to gently touch her shoulder and sign slow down. Sweetie, with a warm laugh that made other customers smile without knowing why. And Marcus watched in stunned amazement as his daughter communicated full sentences, complete thoughts, and even jokes that made Maya throw her head back in genuine delight. Maya signed her responses while speaking aloud for Marcus's benefit, her voice carrying a teacher's patience. She's telling me about her stuffed elephant named Mr. Peanuts, who protects her from bad dreams, and how she wishes you knew that she's not sad about not talking with her voice because she has so many words in her hands. And Marcus felt his chest tighten as he realized how much of his daughter's world he'd been missing while focusing on what he thought was wrong with her. The waitress pulled out her order pad, but instead of writing immediately, she drew a quick elephant next to the butterfly, adding a tiny crown on its head, which made Lily bounce in her seat with excitement, signing something rapidly that Maya translated as, "She says you must be magic because you drew Mr. Peanuts perfectly, even though you've never seen him." And then Maya looked directly at Marcus with kind but knowing eyes. Where did you learn to do this?" Marcus stumbled over his words, feeling suddenly small in his expensive suit, like a student who hadn't done his homework, while around them the cafe continued its morning rhythm of clinking dishes and brewing coffee, oblivious to the life-changing moment happening in the corner booth. Maya's expression softened like butter in warm sunshine as she set down her notepad. "My younger brother David was born deaf, and when the doctors told my mama that he'd never have a normal life, she said normal is just a setting on a washing machine, not a way to measure a human being. So our whole family learned ASL together, even my grandmother, who was 73 at the time." She paused to refill Marcus's coffee, though he hadn't touched the first cup, then continued while signing everything for Lily. "But more importantly, Mr. Sterling, communication is about connection, not just words. Your daughter has been trying to build bridges to you for 3 years, but you've been looking for doors instead." The truth hit Marcus like ice water, and he watched as Maya asked Lily what she wanted for breakfast. The little girl, signing enthusiastically about pancakes with faces made of fruit, something she'd apparently wanted to try for ages but couldn't explain to anyone who would understand. "She's incredibly bright," Maya said, watching Lily draw on a napkin. "She just told me she knows you love her, but you're scared of her quiet, and she wants you to know that her quiet isn't empty, full of thoughts and dreams, and stories about dragons who can't roar, but still save kingdoms with their wisdom." Marcus's hands trembled as he set down his phone, abandoning his plan to text his assistant, and asked, in a voice thick with emotion, Would you teach me? The signs, I mean. I need to learn how to talk to my daughter, and the vulnerability and his voice made several nearby customers pretend they weren't listening while secretly wiping their eyes. Maya's face lit up with approval as she signed to Lily, whose eyes grew wide with hope. "Your daddy wants to learn your language." And Lily's response was to reach across the table and grab Marcus's large hand with her small one, placing it flat on the table and showing him how to sign love by crossing his arms over his chest. "That's your first word," Maya explained. "And Lily says it's the most important one because once you know how to say love with your hands, everything else becomes easier to learn." The breakfast arrived: pancakes with blueberry ice and a strawberry. Smile and Maya stayed nearby, teaching Marcus simple signs like eat, good, more, and thank you. While Lily giggled at her father's clumsy attempts, his fingers like stiff boards, trying to bend into unfamiliar shapes. "You're thinking too hard," Maya advised, demonstrating again. Sign language isn't just about hand shapes, it's about expression, emotion, and intention. Look at Lily when you sign, not at your hands. She needs to see that you mean it, that you're really trying to reach her. Marcus followed the advice and signed "I love you" directly to Lily, probably incorrectly. But his daughter's face crumpled with happy tears as she launched herself across the booth to hug him, her small arms barely reaching around his chest, and he held her while she shook with silent sobs of relief. The other cafe patrons had given up pretending not to watch, and old Rosie, the owner, dabbed at her eyes with her apron while muttering about cutting onions, even though the kitchen wasn't preparing any. And Maya discreetly moved to other tables, giving the father and daughter their moment while keeping an eye on them with protective care. When Lily finally pulled back, she signed something long and complex that Maya translated from across the room, her voice carrying soft and clear. "She says she's been waiting for you to see her. Really see her, not the broken version you think exists, but the real Lily, who loves butterflies and hates broccoli, and wants to be a veterinarian for dragons when she grows up, even though she knows dragons aren't real, but thinks they should be." Marcus laughed a real laugh, not his practiced business laugh, and signed clumsily. "Dragons are real in our house," which wasn't grammatically correct in ASL, but Lily understood perfectly, her grin stretching so wide it looked like it might split her face in half. Maya returned with the check, but she'd written something on it besides the total. "Every Thursday, 3 p.m., I teach ASL basics here for free. You're both welcome." And Marcus nodded gratefully, tucking the receipt carefully into his wallet like it was $1 million contract. As they prepared to leave, Lily signed something to Maya that made the waitress's eyes shine with unshed tears, and when Marcus looked confused, Maya translated. She said, "Thank you for giving me my daddy back, and honestly, Mr. Sterling, that's why I love this job, not for the tips or the free coffee, but for moments like this, when the universe puts the right people in the right place at the right time." Marcus left a $100 tip on a $30 breakfast. But more importantly, he left with his daughter's hand in his, her other hand moving animatedly as she talked non-stop about everything she'd been saving up to tell him, and even though he couldn't understand most of it yet, he nodded and smiled and tried to sign back. Because Maya was right. Bridges weren't built with perfection, but with willingness to try. And for the first time in 3 years, the space between Marcus and Lily wasn't filled with silence, but with possibility. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus found himself returning to Rosie's Corner Café daily, his silver Mercedes looking oddly out of place among the beat-up sedans and pickup trucks in the parking lot. But he didn't care, because inside that simple cafe, his daughter came alive in ways he'd never imagined possible, her hands dancing through conversations while Maya patiently taught both father and daughter new signs during the quiet afternoon hours between the lunch and dinner rush. Coffee, Maya demonstrated on a Tuesday that smelled like rain, her right fist rotating over her left hand like she was grinding beans, and Marcus's clumsy attempts made Lily laugh so hard she nearly fell off her chair, her silent giggles shaking her whole body while she corrected his form with the patience of a tiny teacher, and even the regular customers started anticipating their daily visits, calling out greetings to Lily, who would wave enthusiastically back. Marcus had canceled 3 important meetings that week, something unheard of in Sterling Industries, but when his CFO called concerned, Marcus simply said, "I'm in the middle of acquiring the most important merger of my life," which wasn't entirely untrue, because he was merging his world with his daughter's, one sign at a time. On a particularly rainy Thursday, when the cafe was nearly empty except for an elderly man reading a newspaper in the corner, Maya sat down during her break, her feet obviously aching from the morning shift, and pulled out a worn photo from her apron pocket that looked like it had been handled 1,000 times with love. "This is my brother, David," she said with unmistakable pride, showing them a picture of a young man in graduation robes, standing in front of MIT's famous dome. His grin infectious, even in a photograph, and Lily studied the image with the intensity of someone memorizing every detail, while Marcus noticed the young man's hearing aids, similar to Lily's, but somehow worn like accessories of pride rather than shame. He's studying engineering now, wants to design accessible technology for the deaf community. Maya continued, her eyes distant with memory. "But people used to tell my mama he'd never amount to much because he couldn't hear. Said she should put him in a special home where he could be with his kind, but mama always said, the only disability in life is a bad attitude and a closed heart. And my boy has neither," and she was right, because David just got accepted into a NASA internship program. Lily's hands moved in a question that Maya translated with glistening eyes. She asks if he was scared when people were mean to him, and Maya signed back while speaking. "He was, sweetie, but he told me that being different isn't about being less than others. It's about showing the world there's more than one way to be human, more than one way to be perfect." Marcus watched this exchange feeling like an intruder in a sacred moment, but then Lily signed something else that Maya translated with a soft smile. She says David must be very brave, and that you're brave too, Maya, for working here and teaching people like her dad who don't understand yet that silence isn't empty, it's just a different kind of full. That evening, Marcus canceled a $1 million merger meeting with Japanese investors who had flown in specifically to see him, and his assistant Jennifer nearly had a heart attack when he said, "Tell them I have a prior commitment that cannot be rescheduled," because that commitment was sitting on his mansion's Persian rug with ASL flashcards Lily had made from construction paper, each one decorated with glitter and stickers that got everywhere but made learning feel like a game instead of a lesson. His hands cramped from practicing the alphabet over and over, and Lily patiently corrected him, her small fingers adjusting his position with the seriousness of a master sculptor. And when he finally signed his first complete sentence, "You are my sunshine without any mistakes," Lily's joy was so pure that Marcus understood wealth had nothing to do with money. The next afternoon at the cafe, Maya taught them how to sign emotions, her face demonstrating each feeling with theatrical precision that made Lily giggle. "Happy is like your face is blooming," Maya explained, her hands spreading from her chest outward like petals, opening, and sad is when everything falls down, her hands drooping like wilted flowers. And Marcus realized that sign language wasn't just about words, but about poetry in motion, about making the invisible visible through movement and expression. A construction worker at the next table had been watching them for days, and finally worked up the courage to approach, his hard hat tucked under his arm. "Excuse me, miss, but my nephew is deaf, and I've been wanting to learn ... Could I maybe join these lessons?" And before long, their corner booth had become an impromptu classroom, with Maya teaching a growing group of people who wanted to bridge gaps in their own lives. Rosie, the cafe owner, a sturdy woman in her 70s with silver hair and knowing eyes, brought over free cookies for everyone, signing thank you to Maya. Apparently she'd been secretly learning too, inspired by watching them every day, and she told Marcus, "In 40 years of running this place, I've never seen anything bring people together like this. You've started something special here. Marcus noticed how Maya never charged anyone for these lessons, despite clearly needing the money. Her shoes worn at the heels, and her car making concerning noises in the parking lot. But when he tried to pay her, she refused with a firm shake of her head. Mr. Sterling, money can't buy what's happening here. Lily is teaching all of us that different doesn't mean broken, and that's a lesson worth more than any paycheck. One afternoon, Lily signed a story about a princess who couldn't speak but saved her kingdom with her hands, creating magic through movement, and the entire cafe stopped to watch, even the cook peering out from the kitchen as Maya voiced the tale with dramatic flair. And when it ended with the princess teaching the whole kingdom sign language so everyone could understand each other, the construction worker actually wiped away a tear, muttering something about allergies. Marcus's phone buzzed constantly with missed calls from his office, deals waiting to be signed, meetings needing his attention. But he turned it to silent because he was finally understanding that the fortune he'd spent years building meant nothing. If he couldn't tell his daughter "I love you" in a language she could hear with her eyes, as the afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting golden shadows that made everyone look softer. Maya taught them the sign for family, the two hands creating a circle, encompassing everyone within, and Marcus realized that's what they'd become in this unlikely place, where coffee was served in chipped mugs, and love was taught through silent words. A family bound, not by blood, but by the willingness to learn each other's languages, to meet each other where they were instead of demanding they be somewhere else. And when Lily signed to him that evening, "Daddy, you're getting good at talking with your hands," Marcus knew that every canceled meeting, every missed call, every moment spent in this humble cafe was worth more than all the deals he'd ever made. Because he wasn't just learning sign language, he was learning how to be the father Lily had been waiting for all along. 3 weeks into their routine, Marcus arrived early on a gray Monday morning to find the cafe unusually quiet, the regular warmth replaced by worried whispers among the staff. And Rosie's face looked drawn with concern as she approached his table with heavy steps. "Maya's not here today, Mr. Sterling," she called in, but could barely speak through the crying her brother David. "The one she told you about. He's in the hospital after a terrible accident," and Marcus felt his coffee cup slip from his fingers, the hot liquid spreading across the table like dark news seeping into their happy world. Without hesitation, Marcus asked for the hospital name, his voice carrying the same authority he used in boardrooms, but now tinged with genuine concern. And Rosie hesitated before writing it down on a napkin. She wouldn't want charity, Mr. Sterling. She's proud like that. But Marcus was already standing, taking Lily's hand as she signed anxiously, asking where Maya was with worried eyes that understood something was wrong. The drive to St. Mary's Hospital felt endless, even though it was only 15 minutes away. And Marcus found Maya in the waiting room on the 3rd floor, still wearing yesterday's clothes with her colorful head wrap askew, tears streaming down her face as she clutched the same photo she'd shown them days before, her hand shaking like leaves in a storm. "Maya," Marcus said softly, and she looked up with red-rimmed eyes, trying to compose herself, but failing when she saw Lily, who immediately ran to her and climbed into her lap, small hands signing comfort that needed no translation, and Maya held the child like a lifeline while sobbing into her hair. David was hit by a drunk driver last night. He was just walking home from the library, just walking home, and now they say he might lose his vision too, on top of being deaf. How will he? He's worked so hard, so incredibly hard to get where he is. Marcus sat beside them, his expensive suit incongruous with the plastic waiting room chairs, and for the first time in his life, he didn't know how money could fix something. But then Lily pulled back from Maya and signed something with such intensity that both adults watched transfixed as Maya translated through her tears. She says David still has you, and that's everything. She says that when her mommy went to heaven, she thought she had nothing. But she was wrong, because love doesn't leave when people can't see or hear or speak. Love finds new ways to exist. The truth hit Marcus like a physical blow, understanding suddenly why Lily had stopped speaking after the accident. Not from trauma alone, but from the weight of trying to explain her grief in words that felt too small. And here was Maya, who'd given his daughter a language big enough for her feelings, now facing her own unbearable fear. "Which doctor is treating him?" Marcus asked, already pulling out his phone, and Maya shook her head weakly. "We have basic insurance. They're doing what they can. But the specialist who could maybe save his vision doesn't take our plan, and the rehabilitation he'd need to learn to navigate being both deaf and blind. We could never afford it. My mama's already taken out a second mortgage just for his college tuition." Marcus stood up with the same determination he used when closing billion-dollar deals. But this time, it wasn't about profit margins. "Maya, listen to me. David is going to have the best doctors, the best treatment, the best everything. And before you say it's charity, it's not. It's gratitude. Because you gave me back my daughter. You taught me that love isn't about fixing someone, but about meeting them where they are. And now I'm going to meet you where you are." Maya's protest died on her lips when Lily signed something that made fresh tears flow, and Maya translated with a breaking voice. "She says this is what family does, and we're family now because we share the same language of the heart." And even the nurses passing by had to look away to hide their emotional faces. Within an hour, Marcus had the head of neurology and the best ophthalmologist in the state consulting on David's case. His influence opening doors that insurance cards couldn't. And when David's mother arrived, a small woman with Maya's same warm eyes, but aged by worries, she nearly collapsed when Marcus explained that everything would be taken care of, that her son would have whatever he needed to recover and continue his education. "Why would you do this for strangers?" she asked in wonderment. And Marcus looked at Maya, teaching Lily a new sign to keep her distracted from the hospital's sadness, and said simply, "Because your daughter taught me that the only real disability is the inability to love without conditions." And my daughter was drowning in silence until Maya threw her a lifeline. "This isn't charity. It's balance. It's the universe making things right." The surgery took 14 hours. And Marcus canceled an entire week of meetings to stay at the hospital with Maya's family, bringing food, keeping spirits up, and watching Lily become a beacon of hope for everyone. Her signed jokes and stories, making even the worried medical staff smile. And when the surgeon finally emerged with good news, that they'd saved most of David's vision, though he'd need extensive therapy, the waiting room erupted in tears and hugs that transcended language. David woke up confused and frightened, bandages over his eyes, unable to hear the reassurances around him. But Maya guided his hands to feel Lily's small ones signing into his palm. Letter by letter, "You're going to be okay. You're brave like astronauts." And David's face crumpled with relief, knowing he wasn't alone in his darkness. Marcus watched this scene, feeling something fundamental shift inside him, remembering all the times he'd thrown money at problems instead of presence. All the times he'd tried to buy solutions instead of building connections. And he understood. Now that Maya hadn't just taught him sign language, she'd taught him a completely different way of being human. "The bill," Maya's mother started to say, but Marcus cut her off gently, "is already handled, including David's rehabilitation and any adaptive technology he needs for MIT. And before you protest, you should know that I'm starting a foundation in Lily's name for families dealing with sensory disabilities. And I need Maya to run it, because she understands what families actually need versus what people think they need." Maya's hands flew to her mouth in shock, and she looked between Marcus and Lily, who was signing excitedly about all the people they could help. And Marcus continued, "The salary is substantial. The hours are flexible around your teaching degree. And yes, this is partially selfish, because I need you in our lives. Lily needs you. And frankly, the world needs more people like you who see ability where others see limitation. The hospital room fell silent, except for the beeping of machines. And then David, still unable to see, but sensing the emotional weight of the moment, raised his hands and signed into the air. "Tell the rich guy thank you, but also tell him." He signs like a toddler, with mittens on, and everyone laughed through their tears. Even Marcus, who signed back clumsily, getting better every day, which made David smile despite his bandages. As they sat in that hospital room, an unlikely family brought together by circumstance and held together by choice, Marcus realized that his daughter's silence hadn't been a wall but a doorway, and Maya hadn't just been a waitress who happened to know sign language. She'd been the answer to a prayer he didn't know he'd been praying. And sometimes the truth unveils itself, not in boardrooms or bank accounts, but in hospital waiting rooms, where love speaks louder than words ever could. 6 months later, Rosie's Corner Café buzzed with unusual energy that made the old building seem to vibrate with anticipation, transformed from its usual humble self into something magical with strings of lights, twinkling like stars, and a small wooden stage that Marcus had built himself his hands, now calloused from learning carpentry, alongside sign language set up in the corner where their booth used to be. The mixed crowd defied every social boundary, with people in everything from thrift store finds to designer suits, sitting side by side. Construction workers next to CEOs, all their hands moving in animated sign conversations that would have seemed impossible half a year ago. And in the front row sat David, dark glasses protecting his healing eyes, his fingers reading the Braille program, while Maya stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder, wearing a new dress that her mother had sewn, specially for this occasion. Lily climbed onto the stage, her small form dressed in a butterfly costume she'd designed herself, purple wings shimmering with every movement, and the room fell silent as her hands began to move with the confidence of a symphony conductor, while Maya's voice carried her words to those still learning the visual language. "My name is Lily Sterling, and I want to tell you about finding my voice, not with words that come from the throat, but with words that come from the heart and speak through the hands, because I learned that being heard isn't about sound. It's about someone caring enough to listen in whatever language you speak." The audience leaned forward as one body, even old Rosie dabbing at her eyes with her signature apron, as Lily continued signing with Maya, translating. "This cafe is special because here, everyone speaks the same language, kindness, and doesn't matter if you use your hands or your voice or your eyes or your heart, because love translates itself when people are willing to learn." Marcus watched his daughter command the room, remembering the silent, withdrawn child from 6 months ago who had hidden behind her hair, and his chest swelled with pride as Lily explained the Lily Sterling Foundation for Inclusive Communication, which would fund ASL programs in every school in the state, and had already committed to hiring deaf and hard-of-hearing employees in all Sterling Industries divisions, making it the first Fortune 500 company with such a comprehensive inclusion program. "Maya Andrews will be our director," Lily signed with a grin toward her mentor, "because she taught my daddy that different doesn't mean broken. And she taught me that my silence is just another kind of music that not everyone has learned to hear yet, but they can learn. Everyone can learn, if someone is patient enough to teach them." The construction worker from weeks ago stood up and signed, somewhat clumsily, but with deep emotion. "My nephew started mainstream school last week because of the ASL program you funded, and for the first time, he has friends who can talk to him," and his testimony opened a floodgate of stories from the audience about connections made, relationships healed, and walls torn down because of what had started in this small cafe. David carefully stood up, his recovery nothing short of miraculous, though he still struggled with balance sometimes, and his hands moved in the air as Maya voiced his words, with tears streaming down her face. "6 months ago, I thought my world was ending when I lost most of my vision, on top of being deaf. But this little girl, this brave, brilliant little girl, me that we don't need all our senses to sense love, We just need people who refuse to let us disappear into darkness." The crowd erupted in both applause and the ASL sign for applause, hands raised and shaking like leaves in a joyful wind, and Marcus noticed the news crew in the corner filming everything. Because the story of a billionaire who learned sign language to talk to his daughter had captured the world's attention. But more importantly, it had inspired thousands of parents to learn their children's languages, whatever those might be. Lily signed something that made Maya laugh out loud before translating. She says that if anyone wants to learn sign language, classes are still free every Thursday at 3, but now we have cookies thanks to Rosie, and also her dad makes really good coffee now that he's learned to work the machine, even though he still signs like he's wearing oven mitts. And Marcus laughed along with everyone else, not minding the gentle teasing because it was true. His signs were still clumsy, but they were genuine, and Lily understood them perfectly. The mayor stood up to present Lily with a Junior Citizenship Award for her work in the community. But Lily's attention was caught by a small boy in the back, hiding behind his mother, his hands fluttering like uncertain birds, and she immediately jumped off the stage and ran to him, her butterfly wings flowing behind her as she signed. "Hi, I'm Lily. Do you want to be friends?" And the boy's face lit up like Christmas morning as he signed back, his mother crying openly as she watched her son make his first friend who could speak his language. Maya took the microphone, her voice strong and clear. "When I met Lily and Marcus Sterling, I was just a waitress who happened to know sign language. But they taught me that sometimes the universe puts us exactly where we need to be, not where we planned to be, and that every person we meet might be carrying a key to a door we didn't even know was locked." She paused, looking at David, who gave her a thumbs up he couldn't see, but knew she needed. The foundation isn't just about teaching sign language. It's about teaching the world that there are millions of ways to be human, millions of ways to communicate, and every single one is valid and beautiful and deserving of respect. Marcus finally stood, his hands moving more smoothly now as he signed while speaking, a skill that had taken months to develop. "My daughter's silence taught me to listen with more than my ears, to speak with more than my voice, and to understand that the biggest barriers between people aren't physical or sensory. They're the walls we build when we're afraid of what we don't understand." He looked directly at Lily, who was now teaching 3 other children how to sign butterfly, and continued, "I spent years trying to fix something that wasn't broken, trying to force my daughter into my world instead of learning to enter hers. And if Maya hadn't been working that morning at Rosie's Café, if she hadn't seen my daughter's light when I could only see darkness, I might have missed the most important conversation of my life, the one that happens without sound, but speaks volumes." The evening continued with performances from the local deaf choir, their signs synchronized like a ballet. And David played piano, a skill he'd developed by feeling the vibrations, while Lily danced her butterfly dance, and nobody cared that the music and the movement weren't perfectly aligned, because perfection wasn't the point. Connection was, as the sun set through the cafe windows, painting everyone in gold and amber. Marcus caught Maya's eye and signed the words he'd been practicing for weeks. "Thank you for teaching me to listen with my eyes and speak with my heart, for showing me that my daughter's voice was always there. I just needed to learn her language." And Maya signed back, "She taught us all, Marcus, that silence isn't empty, it's full of possibility." The evening ended with everyone in the cafe joining hands in a huge circle, signing together the word family. And in that moment, in a simple cafe where coffee cost $2 and love was priceless, a billionaire discovered his greatest fortune wasn't in his bank account, but in the bridge built between 2 worlds by a waitress who saw beyond silence to find a little girl's song. And as Lily stood in the center of the circle, her butterfly wings catching the light, her hands moving like poetry as she signed thank you to each person there, Marcus understood that some circles aren't meant to be broken, but completed, and theirs had been completed not by blood or money but by the choice to see each other fully, to meet each other completely, and to love without conditions or limitations, because that's what family truly means, not the one you're born into, but the one you choose to build with your heart and hands, one sign at a time.